know the Terry Fingers story? I like Terry Fingers. He's this guy in our neighborhood, and the first time he came into our cafe, he was just sitting there eating his cooked breakfast. We do English breakfast, like bacon and eggs and sausages and baked beans and hash browns. And he's sitting there eating his cooked breakfast. And we're just telling him about Jesus and about all the miracles that Jesus is doing. And Terry Finger says, oh, I need a miracle. So I said, oh, tell me, what do you need? And he said, 5 years ago, he said, I was climbing through a broken window. Now, I didn't like to say, what were you doing climbing through a broken window? We just don't ask that kind of stuff in our neighborhood. So anyway, so he's climbing through his broken window, and there's all shards of glass around the frame. And he puts his hands on them. And unfortunately, the bits of glass go into his fingers. And he doesn't go to hospital, because a lot of these people, they won't go to hospital in case, they've got to tell the police what they've been up to, and they don't want to do that. So this glass had got embedded in his fingers, and it'd been there for 5 years. And his friend says to me, oh, I tried with a Stanley knife to get the glass out of his fingers, but it won't come out. So I said, well, Jesus will get it out. Because Jesus can do stuff like that, can't he? Jesus can do miracles. So he's just waiting for us to speak them out and to make them happen. So I grabbed his hands and I said, in the name of Jesus, I command every bit of glass to come out of his body. Now, the next day, Terry comes back into our cafe. He says, you'll never guess what happened last night. He said, I have been up all night. Bits of glass have been coming out of my fingers. Like, on their own. He didn't go to bed because he was just watching the glass coming out of his fingers. That's the power of Jesus. That's my Jesus. But he says, as the glass is coming out my fingers, he thinks, in fact, he tells me, he says, for 30 years, I've had a problem with my foot. And he showed me the sole of his shoe. And there was a hole this size coming, under the sole of his shoe. He said, every pair of shoes I've had for the last 30 years, it's had a hole like this in it, and it hurts to walk on my foot. And nobody knows what's wrong. I've been to the hospital, nobody can find out. But he says, you know what? As the glass is coming out of my fingers in the middle of the night, he says, I think, what is going on with my foot? And he looks down and he sees glass coming out to the bottom of his foot. I mean, this is crazy. And he remembers, because he's had such a bad childhood, he'd blanked all the memories. But he remembered that when he was 10 years old, he jumped off a wall in bare feet onto a glass bottle, and it smashed. And a tiny, tiny bit must have gone into his foot, and it'd been there for 30 years. Well, I said, in the name of Jesus, every bit of glass come out of his body. I didn't say fingers. So at the name of Jesus, every knee has to bow. It has to do as it's told. Glass had to do as it's told, and it had to come out of his foot, even though we didn't know it was there. So he gets completely healed, and then he gives his life to Jesus. Isn't that amazing?